Good morning, traders. Today is Tuesday, May 17th. My name is Charles, and this is the Pirate Traders live stream. All right, well, let's take a look at what happened yesterday. So essentially, or last week, essentially what happened was we created a balancing area, okay, where we had these 3 days here that are overlapping each other. We created what we call a balancing area. Looks something like that. So when we dipped below there last week, and then pulled back up into balance, it increased the odds that we were heading to the opposite end of balance, which is what we did over the weekend and then on Monday. Okay, so when the market pulled back down yesterday and didn't head back down to the opposite end of balance once again on a failure to look above, that was of interest. Okay, so the fact that we now have pushed back outside of this balance area this morning means we could now be trying to break out to the upside. And we would think that because, one, we didn't get all the way to the opposite end on this last rotation down, and the fact that we are now above that previous balance area high. So what we're looking for this morning, the first order of business for the market will be a counter auction to the downside to try to fill the gap getting to yesterday's high. Okay? But if they try to push down and fill the gap and they cannot fully fill it, or they fill the gap down to yesterday's high and then they find support around there, either one of those is what we call a gap and go scenario, which is very bullish to have. On top of that, the fact that yesterday's high is also that balance area high makes that even more potent of an effect. So if the market pulls back down to fill the gap, fills it, and then immediately finds support, that is very bullish for continuation to the upside. Only if we fill the gap and then get continuation lower and start to pull down into yesterday's range do we think the market might need a further pullback. And then we start to take these weak references we left behind into account. But the first order of business is filling the gap and looking for support at yesterday's high. And there's a very good chance they'll find it there, being that it is a balance area high. Okay, we got bad taper at the high. So it seems like they are trying to fill the gap. They are making that the first order of business. But with all those contracts right at the opening price, it means the market is likely to come back up and need some more two-sided trade once it finds support in here. And of course, finding support anywhere inside the gap is bullish. Or if they find it at yesterday's high. Good morning, FRM and David Glass. Welcome. MW in the house. Daniel is here. Philip, good morning to you. Anita, good to see you. Being Prosperous, back with us. MW, yesterday's video got 650 views. That's awesome. I wish it wasn't the one where the microphone wasn't working. But that's good. T-Bay, good morning to you. The Shaw is here. Eldora, Greg H. back with us. Scooball is here. Jose, Rev, J Trader, Ederson, welcome to you. Hustler Forever in the house. Nor Auto Trader and Rugsy are here. John Lass and Jack Spratt, good morning, good morning. Okay, well, we got bad taper on the high and the low here. Implying this market needs more two-sided trade, both directions. JB in the house. Phoenix, salutations. All right, going back to fill that gap a little more. One bullish thing you can see in a situation like this is if the ticks are able to get back to the zero line when the market opens this with this much of the inventory being net long, if the ticks are able to get back to the zero line without pulling price that hard, that is a sign of buyers waiting in the market. And that's, of course, what we're seeing here so far. So there's your half gap fill. Can they get the full gap filled? That is the question. Cyrus, Overlord, and Phoenix, welcome, welcome. Caffeine, Giles, RK, and Boss Man are here. Dean, Courtman, RK Leon, and Ed, welcome to you. Nilesh is here. The Trade Vets, good morning to you. Ronald, good to see you. Scooball says the NQ is bullish. Yes, sir. NQ also has a gap this morning. Not quite as clean a breakout from balance as the ES. But certainly we'll still look for support at yesterday's high, 12,404. Xavier, good morning for you. J Trader, market waiting for Papa. Very, very possible. The market may just grind around waiting for that 2 p.m. Is that when he speaks? 2 p.m.? Yeah. Could be. Could be. Alex, so I see that you're paying us a visit at my trade group, the Trade Vets, tomorrow. Yes, I am. Get your questions ready. Ask me anything. Mac Vince, good morning to you. Novice Trader, good to see you. Bruno, good morning. Scooball, is the 4065 level the high of a previous day? I don't know. I mean, pretty close, yeah. From the 10th. Oh, you see that as weak sellers? Could be. Got good taper. You know, they have all the reason in the world to fill that gap, and they still haven't done it. So it's a little bit bullish to me. Too early to go long, but it's bullish that they are finding support inside the gap. J Trader, Alex, how do I watch? I'll post links to it in the social media tomorrow and in the email that goes out to Brigade members. It'll be at the end of the first hour here. Instead of switching over to the private stream, I'll switch over to their stream on their YouTube channel. Harry P., do you see a bear case or a resistance level? No, I don't see a bear case. Obviously, the first thing they're trying to do, as I said, is fill the gap, right? But the market can trade all the way down to yesterday's high, and it's not bearish at all, as it is still a sign of breakout momentum as long as they find support at yesterday's high. That still counts as a gap and go, which is the most bullish signal we get, a gap and go. I mean, especially combined with a breakout of balance. You got both those things happening simultaneously here. So you got the balance area here. And then you got the gap right here. So if you fill that gap and find support at the balance area high, that is bullish, as balance leads to excess. So the only way I would get bearish on today is if we trade down into yesterday's range and we don't find support and we start to head lower. Then I'd look at all this weakness we left behind as being in need of repair, and also as a look above and fail of the balance area. But at the moment, the gap is the focus. Speaking of which, once again, good taper on the low. Finding support inside the gap is bullish. Scooball again selling at 40.65, but the sellers are not getting anything for it. Yep, those are short-term sellers. They're probably just looking for a gap fill. Scott, what is the NQ gap range? So the gap is down to 12,405. on the queue. So once again, good taper at the low. Found support at the 0 line on the ticks. The buyers are waiting. Donkey, what's ad doing? Nothing exciting. Pulling back a bit. $666 contracts at the low. Bossman says, I think we might be going back into yesterday's range for the NQ. We got a while left to go. It's worth noting, filling a gap shouldn't be that hard, right? A market should be able to fill a gap pretty easily, especially like on the ES, the fact that from the moment we opened, we've just instantly been selling all morning, yet we still haven't even filled the gap. There's information in that. The bulls are awaiting. They're lurking in the high grass, waiting for their chance to pounce. Johnny Be Good. Welcome, Johnny Be Good. What constitutes a weak high or a poor low? Volume? No, so it has to do with the TPOs. So, for example, today's high is weak because it's there was a previous high that was like 1 point away over here from the 9th. It's also weak because it was the opening price for today. So that just increases the odds that surely there was somebody who wanted to do business above where we opened, so that there's some need to come back there and spend some more time up there. That is what that weak reference means. And poor is if two of these TPOs come within a single letter of each other within the same day. That's considered poor. Hail Santa. Good morning, Arthur. Arthur Powell is speaking today at 2 p.m. So once again, you make note, every time the sellers try to push the market lower, the buyers are just waiting. They're already there, ready to go. Good taper on every single low. Still can't fill the gap. Giles, how long would you keep a level like the 5-9 high of the day as a reference? Would you clear it once price has passed through it by more than 2 ticks? Yes, that is fair to say. Um, as far as today's high, it's also the fact that it's the opening price as well that makes it weak. But yeah, once you pass through previous highs and lows in the regular trading hours, not the overnight, they're pretty much less important. So now with all these late sellers trying to pile on here, trying to get that gap filled, there's really only two ways we can play it out from here. Either they succeed, they get down there to yesterday's high and then they take profits down there, or the market pushes back through this level once again, and then those sellers become buyers as the market pushes higher. They're getting themselves trapped here, selling at the lows. I do believe we have some trap buyers that need to get squeezed here. I'm sorry, trap sellers. All right, well, I'm bullish as long as we stay above yesterday's high. Galliumi, Nasdaq can up again. Take profit at 13,500. Yeah, Nasdaq can up again for sure. It's not quite as bullish as the ES though. They're still inside that balance area. So you really want to see them get above that overnight high and come back down and find support before you'd get really bullish. And I would say 13,500 is probably a little too far of a target. Probably like 12,900-ish. Whoops. So if this is your balance area right here, you'd expect to go about that distance up. So 1,300-ish. But they got to break out first, which hasn't quite happened yet. On the queue. But oh, look at the ES. What are all these sellers going to do? They've been piling on and piling on, trying to fill that gap. What happens when we get back above the opening price? They get squeezed. And we get a pop to the upside. Scooball says sellers have 40.65 again, but what kind of sellers? All right, looks like they spent enough time here, convinced enough people to try to fill that gap once again. Can they do it? And how frustrated are these sellers going to become if they can't? Scooball, but what kind of buyers are there if these sellers can win with them? Well, think about it. If you're, a smart buyer, you're not buying inside a gap. What are you waiting for? You're waiting for the gap to fill before you're going to buy. Donkey bias check, bro. How I see nothing bearish here, guys. The ticks were just able an hour into the day to cross below the zero line for the first time. We got a gap and go. We have a breakout of balance, and we just have all these bullish things. I don't understand why bearish. Donkey, just a PSA. Want to make sure you don't misinterpret a bearish sign. I'll know the bearish sign if we start to pull into yesterday's range. Of course, we can dip in there real quick, but it's if we start spending time down in yesterday's range, then we know we don't have the buyers. But my guess is those buyers are just waiting to pounce. All right, NQ, just another point away from filling its gap. Looking for buyers at yesterday's high. Nope, NQ still has one more point to go before filling the gap. Man, let's definitely hope it's not like this till 2 p.m. Someone do something. John says this waiting game is painful but acceptable. Well, it has to be acceptable. We cannot tell the market what to do, only observe what it is doing. Miles, most rotational gap ever. I know, man, the market is having such a hard time. Greg, such a slow early tempo seems odd. Yeah, the only thing that makes sense is that argument that the market is waiting to hear what the Fed has to say. I know I've been saying it over and over again, but the behavior of these sellers is so weak to me. They keep selling these exact levels over and over again. And so that just tells me if this market is able to push through, as soon as it gets above that opening price, it's just going to shoot like a rocket and squeeze out all these shorts, which will have their stops right there. Now, they may win. They may get down there and fill that gap, and that'll give them a chance to take profits. But if they don't, they're building up a lot of steam here. Greg H. Buyers don't seem to have much enthusiasm either. Yeah, enthusiasm, but they've been behaving how they should, right? Every time the market has dipped, they've just calmly bought it back up, creating good taper. So it's not weak hands doing the buying. It's probably a lot more of the weak hand sellers exiting. You know, they're shorting here and they're taking profits here, and they're shorting again, taking profits again. I think the smart hand buyers are waiting for support to buy. Macvin, who are the buyers here? You'd think you'd want to wait for the gap fill. Exactly. So the buyers who are buying in here, to win, they'll have to get lucky. And they'll have to squeeze those sellers. So if they can get the price, like I said, above that open, boom, you get a pop higher when you squeeze all the sellers. Then as the market comes back down, new buyers start to want to buy because they see that as a breakout. So then you get new buyers piling on here for continuation to the upside. That makes these buyers the big winners. But right now, it would just be luck. It's like 50-50 chance whether or not they get that. But if the buyers have the patience to wait for the gap fill, they'll take out a bunch of these sellers down here, giving them the momentum to continue higher. So that is the smarter play. Think about it like a tug-of-war between the buyers and the sellers. The sellers are trying to tug the market lower. The buyers are trying to tug it higher. And when you fill that gap, you take a lot of that tugging pressure away because a lot of these sellers are targeting that gap fill. So once the market gets there, they stop pulling so hard. Well, then all of a sudden the buying power can pull it right back up. And same thing if they get squeezed up here. If they just exit because they get stopped out, that pulling pressure goes away. And then the buying pressure wins. Exotic. What are those bars? They look like they provide tons more info than regular candlesticks. They do, my friend. They surely do. So what you're looking at here is a profile. The one on the right, these two are identical. The one on the right is expanded out, and the one on the left is collapsed. So basically what that shows us, I'll just show you here on the overnight. When it's collapsed together like this, we can see the areas where the market spent the most time, wherever the most letters are. And so that is helpful because wherever the market spends the most time, it is likely to also bring in the most volume and do the most business. And then when we expand out that profile, we can see how the market is moving like a regular candlesticks, how the market is moving throughout the day, or in this case, the overnight. So what I've got up on the screen here is just both of those side by side. One is showing me the expanded, one is showing me the collapsed. The volume profile that's on the left here, that is for the full day's session, whereas the one that's in the middle is just the current 30-minute time period. So in this case, just the B period here. And that allows me to track where the most volume is trading in the moment as compared to where it has been trading throughout the day. Rock, do you take the overnight 100% long inventory into account as they are weak hands, potentially providing sell pressure? Yes, 100%. If you go back and watch the first 5 minutes of the stream, that is what I said. The first order of business for the market was a counter auction to the downside because the inventory was net long from the overnight. And that gap fill was a further reason to want to head lower, right? Gaps often fill. It's just one of those things. Every trader with every system looks at gaps. So you got both of those things in combination. And the fact that that hasn't happened is why I'm bullish. Because the market has been having such a hard time filling that gap that should have been so easy with the overnight inventory so net long. That tells me there are buyers waiting to do business. Speaking of which, moment of truth. Can they finally fill that gap? Screwballs, but if you're a really big trader, you won't buy at yesterday's high with all the sellers leaving their positions. You would buy below it. Yeah, well, you would be layered in, right? So you would have put some orders in here and here and here and here and here. But yes, a little bit of a dip into yesterday's range would be expected. You just don't want it to stay down there. You want it to just poke down there and then pull right back up. Giving those shorts a chance to take profit. And then new buyers to join the party. All right, here we go. They got just one more point to go to fill that gap. Same thing on NQ, not quite filled yet. Very close. Freaking NQ. All right, so this is a tricky read now, because to finish filling the gap, they got to get the C period below the B, but that would begin one time framing lower. But we're still looking for support around yesterday's high and for the market to turn around and head higher. So very tricky read now. All right, well, I'd hoped I could give you something more before I switch streams, but they won't tell us just yet. So obviously repairing the poor lows on both indices would be bearish, and it would get us into yesterday's range, which is also bearish, but I still think there's buyers waiting. So it's going to be a tricky moment here to see how this plays out. But the long and the short of it is if they pull down into yesterday's range and they stay down there, they can't pull back above it, then you look for further downside continuation, and you instantly start to take these weak references into account down here, okay? As a look above and fail of the balance area, if we pull back into balance and we can't get back out, the opposite end of balance becomes the target. And with this much weakness, 4 weak references left behind yesterday, that significantly increases the odds that at the very least we're going to repair the first. So if they pull into yesterday's range and they don't pull back out very quickly, things get bearish real quick. But if they just poke down there and then pull right back above, it's a breakout of balance, which is bullish to the upside. So very, very tricky moment here. But I don't think the market's going to hang around here all day. We are building up momentum to break one way or the other. With that, I shall bid you all farewell. If you have not yet, please smash that thumbs up button. I really do appreciate it. It helps out the channel quite a bit. If you are in the brigade, head on over to the private stream. Let's party.